G'day everyone, and welcome. Today we're going to be taking a bit of a look at the Battle Pass reward tank that is going to be now available, and that's going to be the Kampfpanzer 3 Project 07 HK. Now that's a little bit of a mouthful, so I'm not really going to be saying that full thing out loud. I'm just going to call it the KPZ-3 just because it's a fair bit easier to say. But yes, this thing is the new Tier 9 Battle Pass reward tank that should be now available for people to obtain. Now, if you take a bit of a look at the tank, it looks a lot like the UDES-03, the Tier 8 Swedish tank destroyer. And that's basically what this is, the Tier 9 version of the UDES. It obviously shares a lot of characteristics of the Swedish tank destroyers, the Stridsvagn series, as well as the UDES-03. Like the UDES-03 though, this thing is able to move its gun up and down, so you can do a little bit of funky stuff with the hydropneumatic in terms of being able to elevate your gun, quote unquote, where you can use the hydropneumatic suspension to point your tank downwards and actually use the gun elevation to point it upwards to get yourself a little bit of clearance. But otherwise, this thing plays very, very similarly to those Swedish tank destroyers. Now, what makes this tank a little bit different? Well, if you are familiar with the Kunzepanzer, the Tier 9 German reward medium tank, which has a siege mode, this thing has some of the same characteristics, most notably the fact that your DPM kind of tanks a bit when you actually do jump into siege mode. Now, like, say, the Swedish tank destroyers, your dispersion goes absolutely nuts and you get like about 0.24, 0.25 dispersion in siege mode, but you lose quite a fair bit of DPM when you do enter siege mode, so it's not really ideal with this vehicle. In comparison though, one of the best things about this tank, in comparison to those Swedish tank destroyers, has to be the fact that your mobility inside of siege mode is pretty ridiculous. You go 20 forwards and I believe it's 17 backwards, which is amazing. Sorry, it's actually 18 backwards, and this is without a turbo, I must add. The Swedish tank destroyers, you know, if you enter siege mode, you really are limited in how you're able to maneuver in those vehicles, and it can make a lot of situations quite tricky. So having the extra mobility inside the siege mode with this vehicle is fantastic. One of the things I really do not like with this vehicle though, when I have been playing with it, is the fact that the time to enter and exit siege mode is 3 seconds, and that is really painful. That situation you just saw on the screen there, I probably would have been able to save my teammate there, but unfortunately for me, I just wasn't able to enter siege mode in time, and well, I did have a little bit of a low roll, I believe, but what can you do? If I did have the faster time to switch into siege mode, who knows, that situation may have been different. Another difference I must add in comparison to, say, the Swedish tank destroyers is this thing gets heat, which is really quite useful in this particular situation. For example, I'm finding a Stridsvagn 1030. I can't really pen him reliably from the front with APCR, so having the heat to go through those angled surfaces, fantastic. APCR, obviously, for standard is a fantastic round to be using. Obviously, insane shell velocity makes sniping really quite easy. And the heat just to go through all those angled surfaces makes it really quite nice. Here's another good example of the insanely long time it takes to jump into the siege mode, but then being able to move very quickly whilst you're in that mode to help maneuver and get some of those shots off there. That's really quite useful. One of the things you will have noticed when you're taking a look at this tank is the front is really quite well angled. Now, you can bounce some shells. I'm not going to pretend you can bounce everything. It's definitely not got the armor scheme of, say, the Stridsvagn 103B, for example. This thing is covered in 45mm of armor at the front, which is not the strongest, but it does mean you can be bouncing some shells, right? So, there's a lot of tanks out there that have guns that won't be able to overmatch that 45mm frontal plating. So you can actually pull off some aggressive plays with this vehicle, although it's not necessarily perfect, okay? Now, if you enjoy the Swedish tank destroyers, I think you'll like this thing. If you don't enjoy the Swedish tank destroyers, quite simply, you won't enjoy this thing. it's a decent vehicle. Obviously I haven't had the largest amount of playtime with it. I've only had, say, maybe a day to play a few games in it, because I'm just been busy with work and uni and everything. But I'll probably be picking this vehicle up for myself, and be playing around with it a little bit more on, say, my own account. But I think it might be something worth it if you are interested in this kind of gameplay. That's all I've got for you guys today. Hope you enjoyed it, hope you found it useful, and I will catch you guys next time.